Dr. Alexis Moore, a highly skilled but emotionally distant human medic, stepped out of the transport shuttle and onto the desolate surface of the planet, her boots crunching against the dry, cracked ground. The barren landscape stretched out before her, vast and silent. This was no ordinary mission. Alexis had been called to the edge of the galaxy, to a planet once rich in life, now reduced to a dying world, ravaged by a strange, incurable illness. The survivors, a mix of various alien races, had sent out distress signals, hoping for help, but Earth's medical technology had not been able to find a solution. She adjusted the strap of her medical bag, the weight of the task ahead pressing on her shoulders. This was a last-ditch effort. If she failed here, the survivors would have nothing left to turn to. The medical outpost was a small, isolated complex, a far cry from the bustling hospitals of Earth. It had been designed for emergency use, but was now the last refuge for a desperate population. Inside, the walls were lined with makeshift beds and machines designed to keep the sick alive as long as possible. The air was thick with the smell of disinfectant and something else, a strange, almost medicinal aroma that Alexis couldn't place. She entered the main ward, where several alien species were lying in various stages of illness. Some had fevered expressions, while others were listless, their bodies too weak to even move. The diseases were unlike anything Alexis had ever seen. None of the usual treatments worked, and the symptoms only seemed to worsen. The people here were slowly losing hope, and Alexis was their last hope. The planet had been once ruled by an advanced civilization, one with knowledge far beyond Earth's. But that civilization had fallen in a catastrophic war, leaving behind ruins and secrets. Alexis was here to find those secrets, to uncover the knowledge that could save them. But the real question was, could she even understand the alien methods in time to make a difference? As Alexis prepared to examine one of the patients, she was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. She turned to see a tall, imposing figure walking toward her. The alien stood out not only for his height, but also for his unusual features. His skin was a soft shade of violet, and his eyes, large and expressive, seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. His attire was simple, a form-fitting suit that shimmered with an iridescent sheen, as if it were made from the very fabric of the stars themselves. "Doctor." "Moore," the alien said, his voice calm and soothing. "I am Dr. Kale. I've been sent to assist you." "Assistance?" Alexis frowned. She had already been told that other alien doctors would be helping her, but this was the first time she had actually met one. "What can you do that Earth medicine hasn't already tried?" Dr. Kale smiled softly, though there was an air of mystery around him. "What Earth has is impressive, but there is more to healing than just science. Sometimes what is needed is something beyond what you understand." Alexis narrowed her eyes, not sure whether to be curious or cautious. "I've seen a lot of things in my career, Kale, but I've never seen anything like this." She gestured to the patients around them, each one suffering from a disease that seemed to defy all logic. "I know," Kale replied gently. "That's why I've come. My species, the Saluka, have a different way of healing, a way that may be difficult for you to understand at first, but one that has never failed us." Alexis was skeptical. She had always trusted science, hard, cold, logical science. It was how she had built her career and found success in Earth's harshest medical environments. But as she looked around the outpost at the faces of the sick, she knew that she had to try something different. The traditional methods weren't working. The Saluka were her last hope. "And what exactly is your method?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. Dr. Kale glanced around the room as if ensuring they were alone. "It's something that is difficult to explain with your current understanding, but I will show you." Without another word, he turned and beckoned for her to follow. Alexis hesitated for a moment before falling in step behind him. He led her down a narrow corridor that was lit only by the soft glow of bioluminescent plants growing along the walls. The temperature in the building was comfortably cool, but there was an odd, almost ethereal quality to the atmosphere here. The air felt thick with something she couldn't quite place, a sense of calm mixed with the promise of something extraordinary. They entered a small chamber at the end of the hallway. It was sparsely furnished with little more than a simple cot, a few shelves, and a table covered with strange, glowing instruments. On the far side of the room, Alexis noticed a large container, perhaps the size of a barrel, with what appeared to be a strange, milky substance inside. "What is that?" she asked, pointing toward the container. That, Dr. Kale said, is the essence of Saluka healing, our milk. Alexis's eyebrows shot up. Milk? Kale nodded. Yes, it's not like the milk of Earth creatures. Our species has evolved to produce a substance that contains the healing properties of our biology. It can cure diseases, regenerate tissues, and even repair emotional scars. Emotional scars? Alexis asked, her voice skeptical. You mean like mental health? Yes, Kale replied. Our milk can heal both body and mind. It has properties that allow it to repair neural pathways, calm emotional turmoil, and restore balance to the spirit. Alexis was silent for a long moment. She didn't know what to think. She had been trained to be a doctor, a scientist, and what Kale was suggesting didn't fit into anything she had ever learned. Healing emotions. Restoring balance to the mind with a substance from an alien species. But the sick were dying, and Earth's medicine was failing them. She had to give this a chance. So, how does it work? How do you administer it? Dr. Kale gestured for Alexis to sit on the cot. You must be in close proximity to the patient when the healing begins. The process requires touch and trust. The milk will enter your body through the skin and work from the inside out. Alexis felt a pang of uncertainty. And it's safe. I understand your concern, Kale said, his tone gentle. But yes, it is safe. Our species has used this for generations, and it has never harmed anyone. It is a sacred practice for us. Healing is not just a medical procedure, it is a spiritual act. Alexis couldn't deny the desperation she felt. If what Kale said was true, this could be the breakthrough she had been searching for. If there was any hope left for the patients here, it lay with him and his species. All right, she said, taking a deep breath. Let's try it. Kale nodded. He moved to the table and carefully retrieved a small vial filled with the milk-like substance. The liquid was thick and luminescent, glowing softly in the dim light. With great care, he poured a small amount onto his hands before approaching Alexis. She felt her heart beat faster, unsure of what was to come, but she trusted Kale's calm demeanor and the urgency of the situation. Close your eyes, Kale instructed softly. Trust in the process. Alexis obeyed, trying to calm her racing thoughts. As Kale gently applied the milk to her skin, she felt a warmth spread through her body. It wasn't painful, just intensely soothing, like a soft wave of energy washing over her. For a moment, there was nothing but the sensation of his touch and the strange, calming power of the milk. Alexis could feel her muscles relaxing, the tension she had been carrying for so long slowly melting away. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if every part of her body, every corner of her mind was being gently cradled, healed, and restored. The healing was deep, almost spiritual. When Kale finally withdrew his hands, Alexis opened her eyes, a sense of peace settling over her. She felt different, calmer. More focused, but there was something else, something she couldn't explain. The healing was not just physical, it had touched something deeper within her. She looked at Kale, who was watching her closely. What just happened? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You've just begun the healing process, Kale said softly. Now you'll begin to understand what we mean, but it takes time. The healing process doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, and it will continue to work even after you leave here. Alexis sat in silence, still processing everything she had just experienced. She didn't know if she fully understood what had just occurred, but one thing was clear. This was no ordinary treatment. If it could heal her, could it heal the others as well? As Kale helped her to her feet, Alexis felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time since arriving on this strange planet, she felt hopeful. And that hope, no matter how uncertain, was the only thing that kept her going. Alexis sat in silence for a few moments, her mind racing. The milk, which had felt so warm and comforting, still lingered on her skin. The gentle, almost imperceptible hum of energy that had filled her being was fading, but its effect remained. She felt lighter, clearer. For the first time in a long while, the tension that had always gnawed at her, the exhaustion from years of unrelenting pressure, began to subside. It was as if something had been lifted from her soul. Doctor. Kale watched her intently, giving her time to process what had just occurred. His quiet presence seemed to fill the room with an unspoken understanding. He wasn't in a rush. He didn't pressure her for a reaction. He allowed the healing to speak for itself. When Alexis finally looked up at him, she found his violet eyes searching hers. She felt no discomfort, no judgment, just an unwavering calmness, as if he could see through her walls. those invisible barriers she had spent years building. I don't know what to say, she murmured. You don't have to say anything, Kale replied softly. The healing has already begun. You will feel its effects in time, but more importantly, you will begin to understand the way we heal. It's not about instant results, it's a process. And in that process, you'll find more than just physical restoration. Alexis absorbed his words, her mind racing. What had happened to her body just now? Was it possible that such a simple touch, such a strange, alien touch, could truly heal her inside and out? She had been skeptical, but now, after feeling the effects firsthand, she wasn't so sure anymore. I feel different, she said quietly, as if afraid the feeling would disappear if she spoke too loudly. But it's hard to describe, like I've let go of something, like I can breathe easier. Kale nodded in acknowledgement. That is the first step. Many believe that healing is just about treating the body. But the mind, the emotions, they need healing too. And if we do not heal the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, then the body will always break down again. The illness here isn't just physical. It is a sickness of the soul, of the mind. The disease takes root in places you cannot see, and we must begin there where it hides. Alexis blinked, processing what Kale had said. You're telling me that the people here, the ones suffering, they're not just sick physically. It's deeper, Kale gave her a soft, knowing smile. Yes, it is a sickness of the spirit. That is what makes it so hard to heal. The words hit Alexis harder than she expected. She had spent her life studying medicine, learning to treat the body. Yet Kale was speaking of something far beyond her training. She had never been taught to treat the soul, the unseen wounds that people carried inside. I thought healing was just about science, she murmured, almost to herself. It is, Kale answered gently. But science alone cannot reach into the heart, into the places where pain festers. It cannot mend what is broken within a person's spirit. Alexis was silent for a long while. She didn't have the answers, not yet, but Kale's words resonated with something deep within her. Something she had never fully acknowledged. She had always focused on the physical, the measurable, the concrete. She had never taken the time to understand the emotional toll illness could take on a person, or how it could affect their ability to heal. It had always been about the symptoms, the fever, the infection, the wounds, but what if those things weren't the root cause? Tell me more, Alexis finally said, her voice steady. What exactly are we treating here? Is it just the disease, or is it something else? Kale led her to a small viewing window in the room, where they could look out over the desolate landscape. The planet's once thriving cities had been reduced to ruins, their glass towers now dark and crumbling. The few remaining survivors who had made their way to the outpost had their backs turned to the window, resting in their beds, their bodies fighting the fever that racked them. The disease takes many forms, Kale explained, his tone thoughtful. But it is not the same as the illnesses you would find on Earth. It is a sickness of the mind, an affliction that wears down the body over time. The infection comes from the imbalance of the energy within a person. When a person's emotional state is in chaos, when they carry grief or rage or fear, it weakens the body's defenses. They become vulnerable to illness, and their body's natural healing mechanisms fail. Alexis's eyes widened. So it's not just bacteria or viruses. It's something else entirely. It's emotional, spiritual. You're saying the people here are sick because of what they've experienced? Yes, Kale replied, his voice heavy with the weight of understanding. The fall of their civilization was traumatic, and they carry the scars of that loss. The loss of family, the destruction of their homes, the collapse of their society. It has all built up over time, creating an imbalance within them. That imbalance manifests as physical sickness. Alexis felt a pang of sympathy for the people in the beds before her. She had come to treat them as patients, as cases to solve. But now she saw them in a different light. They weren't just people with diseases. They were survivors carrying the weight of their pasts. I've been treating them all wrong, she said softly, more to herself than to Kale. I've been focusing on the symptoms, the outward signs of the disease. But I haven't been paying attention to the deeper, invisible wounds they carry. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. It's not your fault, Dr. Moore. You came here to help, and that is enough. The knowledge you need will come in time. But it must begin with understanding. The treatment for this illness is not just medicine. It is empathy, connection. It is the ability to reach into the depths of a person's pain and offer healing where it's needed most. Alexis took a deep breath, absorbing his words. It was a lot to take in, but she was beginning to see the truth of it. Healing was never just about the body. It was about the whole person. It was about the stories they carried with them, the emotional weight they bore, and the peace they had lost. To truly heal, they would need more than just medication or advanced technology. They would need to heal the soul. "All right," Alexis said, standing tall. "Then show me. Show me how to help them, how to reach those deeper wounds. I don't know how, but I'm ready to learn." Cale nodded, his eyes filled with quiet pride. "That is all I ask. The rest will follow." The days that followed were filled with new discoveries. Alexis began working alongside Cale to administer the milk, first to herself, then to the patients in the outpost. At first, the process was slow and delicate. Alexis had to learn the right way to approach each individual, to connect with them in a way that was not just medical but deeply personal. Every patient was different, each carrying their own burdens, their own unique traumas. Some were hesitant, fearful of the unknown. Others embraced the healing touch with open arms, desperate for relief. Alexis had never known healing could be so intimate, so deeply human, or in this case, so deeply alien. The milk, with its otherworldly properties, was more than just a treatment. It became a bridge between the physical and the emotional, a way to bring people back to themselves, to restore balance where it had been lost. She began to understand the process more clearly. The milk worked by balancing the body's energy, aligning the physical and emotional states. As it entered the body, it not only healed the physical wounds, but also reached the deeper parts of the mind, calming the turbulence within. In this way, it wasn't just a cure, it was a restoration. It helped the patients reclaim parts of themselves they had lost, to reconnect with the emotions and memories they had buried deep within. But the healing wasn't without its challenges. Alexis struggled at times, unsure of how to approach certain patients. Some resisted the process, unwilling to open themselves up to the possibility of healing. Others were too overwhelmed by their past traumas to allow themselves to receive the help they needed. Alexis found herself growing frustrated at times, feeling as though the solution was just out of reach. But each time she doubted, Cale was there, offering guidance, reminding her that healing was not a straight path. It was a journey, one that required patience and trust. As the days turned into weeks, Alexis saw the transformation in the patients around her. They began to smile again. They started to speak more freely, to share their stories. The physical symptoms of the disease began to fade, but it was the emotional healing that Alexis found most moving. She watched as people began to reconnect with their joy, their hope, and their strength. She could see it in their eyes. Their souls were healing. And in turn, their bodies followed. In the quiet moments when Alexis would pause to rest, she reflected on her own journey. She had come to this planet with only the tools of Earth's medicine. But now she realized that the true gift of healing lay in something more profound than anything she had ever learned in medical school. It lay in the ability to truly see another person, to understand their pain, and to offer them the comfort and care they needed to heal, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. And as she looked at Cale, the alien who had shown her this new path, she realized that perhaps Earth's medicine wasn't the only answer after all. Perhaps there was more to healing than science. There was empathy, there was connection. And there was the willingness to open one's heart to the unknown. It was a lesson that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The days were growing longer, and Alexis felt herself becoming more deeply involved in the healing process. She had been working alongside Dr. Cale, helping the patients in the outpost, and watching them recover in ways that seemed impossible. With every passing day, the once hopeless atmosphere that had filled the outpost was slowly shifting. Patients who had been lying in bed for weeks, their bodies frail and their faces filled with despair, were now sitting up, speaking, and even laughing. It was as if they were returning to life, and Alexis could see it with her own eyes. But as the patients healed, tensions in the outpost began to rise. There were some in the outpost who still didn't trust the alien methods. They whispered in hushed voices, questioning the safety of the treatments and whether they were truly working. Alexis had heard the murmurs, but she had never paid much attention to them. She was too focused on the patients, too focused on the healing she was witnessing. But now, the doubts were becoming louder. One morning, as Alexis was making her rounds, she encountered Dr. Samuel Voss, one of the senior Earth medical officers at the outpost. He was standing in front of a small group of doctors and researchers, his arms crossed, his face set in a frown. When he saw Alexis approach, he gave her a tight smile. It wasn't a welcoming smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they're about to have an uncomfortable conversation. "Dr. Moore," Voss said, his voice sharp, "we need to talk." Alexis stopped in her tracks, sensing the tension in his tone. She had worked with Voss for a long time, but she had never seen him like this. There was a coldness in his eyes that she hadn't noticed before. "What's going on, Dr. Voss?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. "We've been monitoring the patients closely," Voss began, his voice low. "And we've noticed something strange. Those who have been treated with the Saluka's milk while they're recovering physically seem to be exhibiting unexpected behavior. We've seen cases of extreme emotional shifts, some patients becoming unusually attached to their caregivers, others displaying bursts of anger or irrational behavior." Alexis's heart skipped a beat. She had seen some of these changes, but she hadn't thought much of them. It seemed natural that patients who had been through so much trauma would experience these emotional fluctuations as they recovered. But now that Voss mentioned it, she could see how it might appear concerning to others. "And what do you propose?" Alexis asked, her voice steady despite the knot that was forming in her stomach. "We need to stop using the milk," Voss said bluntly. "It's causing more harm than good. We cannot risk further psychological damage to these patients." Alexis felt a wave of frustration rise within her. She had seen the patients change before her eyes, their bodies healing and their spirits lifting. Yes, there were emotional shifts, but they seemed temporary, a natural part of the healing process. How could Voss be so certain that the milk was the problem? "You can't just stop the treatment," Alexis said firmly. "You don't understand it. You don't see what I see. These people are healing. The milk is working, and it's not just treating the physical symptoms. It's healing them inside, too." Voss shook his head. "We've seen enough. It's not worth the risk. We're not in the business of experimenting with alien substances that could be doing more harm than good." Alexis's frustration flared. "I'm not experimenting with anything. I'm trying to save their lives." Voss's expression hardened. "I don't care how well-intentioned you are, Dr. Moore. You're playing with fire, and you're going to burn us all if you're not careful." The conversation ended there, with Alexis feeling as though the ground beneath her was shifting. She had always known that the people at the outpost wouldn't fully embrace Cale's methods, but she hadn't realized just how strong the opposition was. Now it wasn't just about saving lives. It was about a battle of beliefs. Voss and his supporters saw her as a fool, someone blinded by the allure of alien medicine, while she saw them as being too rigid, unwilling to consider something outside their narrow view of healing. Over the next few days, the tension only grew. Voss and his supporters began to hold meetings in secret, discussing their concerns about the Saluka milk and what they called its unpredictable effects. Alexis overheard snippets of these conversations as she walked through the halls of the outpost. Some argued that the milk was altering the patient's behavior in dangerous ways, while others speculated that it could have long-term psychological effects that they couldn't yet understand. Meanwhile, Alexis continued to work alongside Cale, trying to focus on the patients who were still recovering. Despite the opposition, she couldn't bring herself to believe that what they were doing was wrong. The changes she had seen in the patients were nothing short of miraculous. They were recovering in ways she had never imagined possible, and yet the doubts lingered in the back of her mind. She found herself alone in her quarters one evening, staring out at the dimly lit horizon of the planet, the stars scattered across the sky like scattered jewels. The view was beautiful, but it did little to calm the storm brewing inside her. She didn't know who to trust anymore. She had believed in the Saluka's methods, but now she was unsure. Was Voss right? Was she really playing with fire? The door to her quarters opened and Cale entered, his calm presence filling the room. He didn't say anything at first, just stood by the door waiting for her to speak. "I don't know what to do anymore," Alexis said, her voice tight with frustration. "Voss and his people are right. There's something happening here. The patients are changing, and I don't know if it's for the better." Cale walked over to her, his gaze gentle and understanding. "Healing is not always a straightforward process. You are seeing the surface, but you must look deeper. Change is not always comfortable. It can be painful, even frightening, but it is necessary." "I don't know if I can keep doing this," Alexis admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought I was helping them, but now I don't know if I'm just making things worse." Cale placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and reassuring. What you are doing is hard, Dr. Moore. You are standing at the edge of something unknown, something that has never been done before. But you are not alone. You have me and you have the patience. And together you will find a way. Alexis nodded, taking a deep breath. She knew Cale was right. She had always been a doctor who believed in science and logic, but now she was learning to believe in something else. Something that couldn't be explained with facts and data. Something that was about more than just the body, it was about the whole person. The mind, the spirit, the soul. As the days passed, the divide between the two factions grew wider. Voss and his supporters began to gather more influence, and Alexis found herself becoming increasingly isolated. The arguments against the Saluka methods grew louder, and the pressure to abandon the milk grew stronger. But Alexis refused to back down. She had seen the miracles it was performing. She had seen people go from near death to full recovery, and she knew that Cale's methods were the key. No matter what Voss said, she couldn't turn her back on the patients who needed her. But as the opposition continued to grow, Alexis realized that she was at a crossroads. She couldn't keep fighting this battle alone. She needed more support, more allies. And if she was going to prove that the Saluka's healing methods were the key to saving the planet, she would have to convince those who didn't believe. The battle for the future of the patients, the future of the healing process, was far from over. But Alexis knew one thing for certain: she couldn't give up now. Not when the hope of so many lives was at stake. The tension in the outpost had reached a boiling point. Alexis could feel it in every conversation, every glance exchanged in the hallways. People were divided. There were those who supported the Saluka methods, who saw the healing as a miracle. And then there were those who saw it as dangerous, untested, and perhaps even too good to be true. As each day passed, the pressure on her to stop the treatment grew heavier, but Alexis knew she couldn't turn back now. Too many people were counting on her. She had seen the results herself. The patients who had been given up for dead were now walking, talking, and smiling. They had been reborn in a way, their bodies healed and their spirits revived. But still, the questions lingered. Was this real healing, or was it something else? Something unnatural. Alexis sat in her small office, staring at the data she had collected. On one hand, the medical reports were clear. Patients who received the Saluka treatment showed dramatic physical improvements. Their infections were clearing up, their energy levels rising, and they were no longer at the brink of death. But the emotional changes were harder to quantify. Some patients were more open, others more distant. Some had become almost too attached to the treatment, relying on it for more than just physical healing. She ran a hand through her hair, frustrated. She had spent years studying medicine, learning to focus on the facts, the evidence. But here she was, facing a situation that couldn't be measured or controlled by the tools she had learned to trust. Was this truly a breakthrough? Or was she simply blinded by her desire to save these people? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. She looked up to see Dr. Cale standing in the doorway, his expression calm as always. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and took a seat across from her. "I know you're struggling," Cale said gently. "I can feel the weight of it in you. You're trying to find answers, trying to make sense of it all, but sometimes there are no easy answers." Alexis didn't respond immediately. She was grateful for Cale's quiet presence, his patience. He had always been a calming force in the midst of the chaos, but his words hit her deeply. She had been trying so hard to find a clear solution, a scientific explanation for everything, but the truth was that she couldn't control this. The healing was happening in ways that didn't fit into the neat little boxes of her medical training. "I just don't know if I'm doing the right thing," Alexis said finally, her voice strained. "People are getting better, that's what matters, but the emotional changes the way the patients are. Changing, I don't know if it's healthy, I don't know if they're ready for it. Some of them are becoming too attached to the healing process. It's like they need it to feel whole again." Cale's gaze softened. "Healing is never just about the body, Dr. Moore. It's about the mind, the spirit, the whole being. When a person has been broken, when they've experienced deep pain, they need more than just a cure. They need to feel that they can trust that they can heal in every part of themselves." "I understand that," Alexis said, her voice quiet. "But what happens when they become dependent on it? What happens when they can't move on, when they rely too much on something outside of themselves to feel whole?" Cale leaned forward slightly, his violet eyes intense. "Healing is a process, not a destination. The Saluka milk is not a crutch, it is a bridge. It helps people to cross over from the place of pain and suffering to a place of peace, but it is not meant to be permanent. The true healing comes when they can stand on their own, without needing the milk, without needing anything external to feel whole. Alexis let out a long breath, the weight of Kale's words sinking in. She had always believed in the idea that healing was a journey, but she had never fully understood what that meant until now. The patients were healing, but they weren't finished yet. They still had a long way to go, and she had to trust that they would find their own strength to move forward. She looked up at Kale, her eyes searching his. How do I help them get there? How do I help them trust in their own healing? Kale smiled gently, a small but knowing smile. You've already started, by trusting them, by being there for them, by showing them that healing is possible. The rest will come in time. As Alexis sat in silence, her mind began to shift. She had been so focused on the immediate results, the physical recovery of the patients, that she had forgotten the emotional and spiritual aspects of healing. Kale was right. This wasn't just about curing a disease. It was about restoring a sense of hope, a sense of possibility, and most of all, a sense of agency within each person. They had to feel that they were in control of their own healing, that they were not at the mercy of something outside of themselves. With Kale's words in mind, Alexis felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a doctor trying to cure a disease anymore. She was a guide, helping her patients find their way back to themselves. But the challenge wasn't over. The opposition was growing stronger. Voss and his supporters had become more vocal, gathering in secret meetings to discuss the dangers of the Saluka treatment. They had started to push for the treatment to be stopped, arguing that the risks were too high, that the emotional changes in the patients were a sign of something dangerous. They saw the emotional shifts as a sign of instability, something that could lead to unpredictable consequences. Alexis knew that if she didn't act soon, the support for the Saluka method would slip away entirely. The vote to end the treatment was coming up in a few days, and she couldn't afford to lose now. Too many lives were at stake. That evening, as Alexis walked through the halls of the outpost, she found herself facing a difficult decision. She had seen the miracles of the Saluka healing, but she knew that convincing the rest of the outpost would require more than just words. She needed proof. She needed to show them, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the Saluka method was not only effective but necessary. She went to Kale's quarters that night, determined to speak with him about her plan. When she arrived, Kale was waiting for her, his expression calm but expectant. She could see that he understood the weight of what she was about to ask. I need your help, Alexis said, her voice firm. I'm going to make a public demonstration of the healing process. I need to show them that it works, that it's safe, that it's the only chance we have left. Kale didn't hesitate. I will help you. But you must understand, this is not just about proving a point. This is about showing them the power of trust, of compassion, of connection. The healing will work if they allow themselves to believe in it. Alexis nodded. I know, but I need to show them. I need to give them a reason to trust. The next day, Alexis gathered the remaining patients in the central hall of the outpost. The space was simple, but it was the heart of the outpost, the place where everyone came together. Voss and his supporters were present, watching closely, their arms folded, their expressions skeptical. But Alexis didn't falter. She had seen what the Saluka healing could do, and she knew this was her chance to prove it. Kale was by her side as she spoke. She began by explaining the Saluka method, how it worked, why it worked, and how it had been used for generations to heal not just bodies but souls. She spoke about the balance it brought to the patients, the peace it restored, and the emotional healing that was just as important as the physical. As she spoke, she invited several patients to come forward to show the others what the treatment had done for them. One by one, the patients stood up, their faces filled with gratitude and hope. They spoke about the pain they had carried with them for so long, the grief, the fear, the sense of loss. And then they spoke about how the healing process had lifted those burdens from them, how they had felt lighter, freer, more alive. The room fell silent as each patient shared their story. Alexis watched as the skeptics began to soften, their faces shifting from doubt to curiosity. It wasn't just the physical healing they had witnessed. It was the emotional transformation, the sense of restoration in the patient's eyes. At the end of the demonstration, Alexis turned to Voss and the others. This is what I'm trying to protect. These people are healing not just in their bodies but in their hearts. I believe in this, and I will fight for them. Voss stood up, his face unreadable. He didn't say anything, but Alexis could see the uncertainty in his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't so sure. And as Alexis stood there, watching the room filled with unsure faces, she realized that this wasn't just a battle for medical supremacy. This was a battle for trust. For belief, and it was a battle that she would fight no matter the cost.